in this lesson, I'm going to look at different ways to solve quadratics. There's 5 ways to do that, as well as linear equations. But let's just look at solving equations and what that looks like. Okay, to solve an equation means that may be you asking that question, but solving an equation means to find the value of x, or any variable. It could be a y or an a or b or whatever. Find the value of x that makes the equation true. In other words, what we're trying to do is we have this mathematical expression here, this equation, and the left side of the equation is 2x plus 7. The right side of the equation is 15. When we're asked to solve, what we're trying to do is to determine the value of x that I would put in for x that would then make this statement true. And this is a linear equation, and this is fairly simple to solve by simply applying our properties. So we would subtract 7 from each side, and we would solve and find out that the value of x should be 4. And 4 is the solution because if I were to substitute 4 in for x, this statement would be true. The left side would be of equal value to the right side. They would both be 15. So that's what solve means, to determine the value that would make the expression true. Now, linear equations, you just saw an example there, are fairly easy to do. And what we just did was the algebraic way to solve the expression. You see it right here in the left corner. There are a couple of other ways that we can solve them. One is a graphical way to solve it. And if we're solving something graphically, what we're looking for is one of two things. We're looking for where the two sides of the equation intersect, or if the equation is set to 0, we're looking for the 0, or where it crosses the x-axis. Now, the way to do that on your calculator is to, you'll want to use the y equal key, which is in the top left. You'll enter in the left side of the expression as y1. You can then enter in the right side of the equation as y2. Now, if the right side is a 0, you don't need to enter in 0 as y2, but you could. But when you graph it, you're not going to see it because y equals 0 is the x-axis. So it will draw a line right on top of the x-axis and you won't really see it. So there's no point in entering it if the value is 0. Once you've done that, you then want to find out where the two intersect. And again, if the right side is 0, it's the x-axis, so you can want to find where, or use the 0 calculation on your calculator. If the right side is not 0, then you'll want to use the intersection key. So, for example, let's just pull this down. So if I had 2x minus 5 is equal to 0, what would that look like? I'm going to make a sketch over here and then just kind of explain what you would look for. So 2x minus 5 is a linear equation. This is mx plus b. So the y-intercept is negative 5, and it has a slope of 2. And so this line would look something like this. Now, we're wondering where this line here, which is the left side of the equation, is equal to 0. So what would make the y value 0? So that's going to be on the x-axis. It's going to be this point right here. So on your calculator, in this case, because this is 0, you want to use the 0 function. And we'll do a short demonstration in class to show you how to do that. So if you're not sure how to do that in your calculator, then check with us in class and we'll straighten that out or help you with that. Okay? Let me do another one here. This one here, for example, this x squared minus 8x is equal to negative 15. Now, if you wanted to leave it like this and solve it graphically, you would take the left side of the equation, x squared minus 8x, and you would graph that. And that would give you some quadratic that looks, something like this. It wouldn't be there, but just to give you an idea. Then as y2, you put in the other side of the equation, that's negative 15. That's going to be a horizontal line at negative 15. And because you're looking for this graph being equal to this graph, you're looking for where they intersect. So you're going to have two answers, one here where they intersect and one here where they intersect. So you would have to do the intersection function twice, one to find out this intersection and one to find out this intersection. And again, we can review that in class if you have questions. So that's what solving an equation is graphically. We talked about solving it algebraically. Solving it numerically is another way you would or could solve an equation, and that would be done by using the table feature on your calculator. Now, we will not use a lot of tables in our calculations, but it is just another way to do it. And then algebraically we already did, so we don't need to talk about that. Now, we're going to look at two types of equations in this lesson, linear and quadratic. We already looked at linear. It's very simple. You solve it. It's just solving for x. With a quadratic, though, you have those x squared. And hopefully from last year you remember we have 5 different ways that we learned to solve the quadratic. We solved them graphically, we solved them by factoring, we solved them by extracting the square roots, we solved them by completing the square, and we solved them by using the quadratic formula. You're going to need to review and make sure you know how to do each one of these methods. So in the next video, there'll be one video on each of these lessons, and then there'll be another video showing some examples from each one of those as well. So that's going to be what this lesson is about, solving linear equations and solving quadratics. Check out the next video on factoring to review how to factor, and then extracting the square root, completing the square, and quadratic. I'll review all of those, so you'll need to watch those and make sure you know how to do each one of these methods whenever you're asked.